My wife betrayed me on our dream vacation. You won't believe how I got revenge. I looked out of the airplane window as we climbed higher into the sky, the clouds swirling around us like the thoughts in my head. Below, Mexico sprawled in anticipation, a land teeming with vibrant life and color. I had spent months planning this vacation with Clara, our first big getaway as a couple. We were to leave our hectic lives behind and escape together to Cancun, but now I struggled to settle into the moment. Instead, a growing knot of anxiety twisted in my stomach, fueled by Clara's distraction, the flickering light of her phone more captivating than our shared excitement. "Isn't it amazing?" Clara exclaimed, her voice bright and unyielding as she gazed toward the endless sea below, her eyes sparkling with a mix of wonder and expectation. I envied that brightness. I longed to feel the same vibrancy, to be the carefree soul she needed me to be. But an uneasy sense lurked just beneath my thoughts, and I couldn't shake it off. "Yes, breathtaking," I replied, forcing a smile. "I can't believe we're finally here." But my voice cracked slightly, illustrating how the words didn't resonate within me. All around, the stifling scent of stale airplane air mingled with the faint aroma of sunscreen, and it was all I could do to maintain the facade as we approached our final destination. The hotel lobby welcomed us with facades of elegance, marble floors glistening under grand chandeliers. Vibrant tropical arrangements brightened the corners like laughs at a party long gone, and a soft tropical breeze chased away the sweat from a long flight. I felt a flicker of excitement struggling to break through the heavy haze of doubt that clouded my mind, but I pushed it down. I wanted to enjoy this time, to forget about the commitments and mundane routines waiting for our return. "Let's check in and then hit the beach," Clara declared, her enthusiasm unwavering. She turned toward me, her sun-kissed hair whipping playfully around her shoulders. I nodded, eager to bask in her infectious energy. We made our way to the counter, exchanging pleasantries with the clerk, who greeted us with the practiced warmth of someone used to dealing with fresh arrivals, even as their eyes skimmed over mats of luggage awaiting them nearby. The path to our room wound through a lush garden, replete with palm trees swaying gently in the soft breeze. Clara picked a flower from a nearby bush, pinching it between her fingers as if drawing life from the petals. I took a breath, feeling the weight of the world lift slightly off my shoulders. But as we rounded the final corner to our suite, something within me grew uneasy, a shadow creeping over the sunshine that had bathed my thoughts. Opening the door, the room revealed itself, drenched in soothing colors and patterns of tropical charm. "Wow, look at this view," Clara gasped, rushing over to the balcony. I forced a smile, knowing it wasn't just the ocean that snagged her attention. It was the escape from her reality, one that didn't include a second thought about our life back home. Surf crashing against the shore illuminated the room's allure, but even with the rhythm of the waves beckoning me to relax, I couldn't dismiss the sense of detachment. Something was slipping away as Clara leaned against the rail, her laughter spilling into the air like sunlight glimmering on water. Over the days that followed, life morphing into a collage of swimming, dining, and sunbathing, Clara's attention shifted away from me, as if the vacation had served as the perfect guise for secretive behavior. I often caught her in separate moments, retreating to her phone with a somewhat guilty look, soft sighs escaping her lips, their tone a mix of delight and concern. Each time it happened, I found myself watching from the corners, the days weighing heavier like lead. "Hey," I said one evening, as the sky transitioned from brilliant orange into deep indigo. "What's with all the texting? Are you okay?" Her eyes flickered up from her screen, as if I'd interrupted some secret conversation. A kaleidoscope of emotions flashed across her face. "Just chatting with some friends back home," she deflected, a practiced ease wrapped around her words designed to soothe my apprehensions. Yet the spark held in her gaze spoke of a deeper, intertwining imprisonment, the kind that kept her away from me, even while she was right there. It felt like the silence stretching between us echoed the distance in our thoughts. Each day was a new challenge. Nights that initially stretched out like endless opportunities morphed into stretches of uncertainty. At a lavish beachside dinner, she hardly touched the lobster. Her laughter felt forced, motions crisp and fake, a theatrical performance I didn't wish to be part of. The distance grew palpable, the laughter we once shared becoming nothing more than a backdrop for a show neither of us could act out with sincerity. While I outwardly embraced the food and entertainment, I grappled with a gnawing worry, a somber truth lurking in the recesses of my mind. Trust felt like a fleeting whimsy dancing just out of reach, and I simmered in the unease, yearning to reconnect with her in a stronger, deeper way. I knew something was off, yet I clung desperately to her smiles, The memories we crafted while trying to convince myself that it was nothing more than vacation pressures. As the sun dipped low that evening, the weight of betrayal tiptoed around the corners of my consciousness, almost a whisper urging further investigation. Could I really trust my instincts? Did I have the courage to unearth whatever shadows clung to our ideal vacation? Despite my fears, I stood at a precipice, torn between confronting the illusion of our paradise and pretending that everything was perfect. Each sunset reminded me that every dream comes at a price, but how steep was the toll when trust faltered so easily, when the dream became a nightmare in the making? Yet, amid the agitation swirling within me, there was still a part that longed to believe in the love we had nurtured, the love that inspired me to immerse myself in the idyllic setting surrounding us. What if I was wrong? What if my anxiety stemmed from insecurities I had yet to confront? I pulled on the threads of hope as the night cloaked my fears, desperately wanting to enjoy our dream vacation despite the uncertainty looming just beneath the surface. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay in bed, staring up at the ornate ceiling, listening to the rhythmic lullaby of the waves breaking onto the shore beyond the hotel window. As Clara slept beside me, I turned on my side to take her in, the curl of her lips, the way her hair fell across her cheek like a curtain safeguarding her dreams. For a brief moment, I cherished the sight. I was drawn to the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman who had brought joy and laughter into my life like the flecks of sun illuminating the ocean. But as her phone vibrated next to me on the nightstand, I felt the warmth of love twist into a slithering coldness once more. The following morning brought the sting of betrayal sharper than before. I couldn't shake the need for answers, so I decided to follow her discreetly as she prepared for her outing. Heart racing and palms clammy, I took my time getting dressed, contemplating whether I was merely a paranoid fool desperately grasping at shadows. As Clara left the suite, I hesitated only a moment before slipping out behind her, convinced that discovering the truth was my only path to restoring clarity and trust in our relationship. Navigating through the luxuriant hotel grounds, I sought refuge among the throngs of vacationers, feeling both exposed and determined. Clara navigated through the bustling crowd with the ease of someone who belonged, her demeanor so carefree, and yet I felt like an imposter trailing after a mirage. The sun poured down, sizzling my skin, as I turned the corner and caught sight of her. My heart sank as she entered a cafe, seated herself at a table that was all too familiar. And then I saw him. Edwin sat across from Clara, his dark hair tousled, a playful smirk dancing at the corners of his lips. I felt my heart plummet as the world around me blurred. The vibrant colors of the tropical paradise started to fade into dull hues. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I could see the way they leaned toward each other, an intimacy that felt foreign and gut-wrenchingly invasive. Clara threw her head back in laughter, and in that moment, something heavy snapped within me. Anger roared to life like a raging wildfire. The one thing I had feared the most settled into my gut like a stone, heavy and unyielding. My mind raced. The betrayal wasn't just an act of infidelity. It felt like she was tearing apart the beautiful dream I had painted in my mind, layer by layer, until only jagged edges remained. The gentle waves that had once beckoned me into the ocean now crashed harshly against me, pulling me under their weight. My instincts screamed at me to confront them, but I could hardly move. I stood frozen on the fringes of their world, teetering between disbelief and despair. I wanted to scream at them, shatter the image of that perfect moment they seemed to own, unleash the torrent of hurt building within me, but no words would come. Instead, I watched. Time lost all meaning as I observed the scene unfold, a tragic play written by someone who took perverse joy in twisting my life into chaos. Clara lightly touched Edwin's arm, a simple gesture so intimate that it felt like a dagger piercing through my heart. In that fleeting moment, I felt unmoored from everything solid, my world spinning out of control. My fists balled tight at my sides, and all at once, my legs moved of their own accord, retreating from this living nightmare. I stumbled back through the garden path toward our room, my breath hitching in my chest with each agonizing step. I felt suddenly hollow, like a ghost drifting through the empty spaces of my own life. The betrayal I had sensed so strongly now took shape, its ugliness seeping into every crack where love had once flourished. Back in our room, I paced the elegant tile floor, driven by a bittersweet mixture of sorrow and rage. The air felt charged, thick with unspoken words and unrequited trust. I could still see Clara's laughter echoing in my mind as I realized that the woman I thought I knew had constructed walls around her heart, walls I had naively believed could withstand anything. But I refused to be a victim in this tale of treachery. I could almost feel the fire rising within me, fanning the flames of a resolution that had been buried beneath my fear. Betrayal, I realized, needed a reckoning. I wouldn't allow myself to merely endure this moment. I would confront it and emerge stronger. And so a new purpose unfolded within me, an understanding that love had to be fiercely protected, that my voice would be heard, that I was worthy of respect. And in that moment, beneath the vibrant colors of a paradise that seemed to mock my sorrow, something began to shift. The first cracks of transformation emerged as I envisioned the truth I had yet to uncover. The audacity of Clara's betrayal had left me shaken, but it would not define me. With the heart of a warrior igniting within me, I clung on to the hope that one way or another, I would seize my control back from the remnants of deception that clung to our fleeting dream. Yet, amid the agitation swirling within me, there was still a part that longed to believe in the love we had nurtured, the love that inspired me to immerse myself in the idyllic setting surrounding us. What if I was wrong? What if my anxiety stemmed from insecurities I had yet to confront? I pulled on the threads of hope as the night cloaked my fears, desperately wanting to enjoy our dream vacation despite the uncertainty looming just beneath the surface. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay in bed, staring up at the ornate ceiling, listening to the rhythmic lullaby of the waves breaking onto the shore beyond the hotel window. As Clara slept beside me, I turned on my side to take her in, the curl of her lips, the way her hair fell across her cheek like a curtain safeguarding her dreams. For a brief moment, I cherished the sight. I was drawn to the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman who had brought joy and laughter into my life like the flecks of sun illuminating the ocean. But as her phone vibrated next to me on the nightstand, I felt the warmth of love twist into a slithering coldness once more. The following morning brought the sting of betrayal sharper than before. I couldn't shake the need for answers, so I decided to follow her discreetly as she prepared for her outing. Heart racing and palms clammy, I took my time getting dressed, contemplating whether I was merely a prying fool or a man fighting for clarity in a storm of confusion. I finished curling the collar of my shirt, fixing the hemline as I caught my reflection in the mirror. Was I ready to confront the truth, no matter how ugly it might be? Each question reverberated through me, but in that fleeting moment, I knew I had to know. Clara's laughter floated down the hall, her effervescent spirit charging the air around her like the vibrant colors in the tropical blooms outside. Watching her so carefree was both a balm and a dagger to my heart. I felt like a stranger sneaking into someone else's beautiful world, a world I had once believed I was part of. As she slipped out of our hotel room, a bright sundress swirling around her like whipped cream, I felt an abrupt breathlessness. I rushed to gather my things, reluctantly following her out of the room, nerves gnawing at my insides. The morning sun felt blinding as I stepped into the sunlight, the biting humidity wrapping around me, drawing forth a sheen of perspiration. With Clara out of sight, I obstructed my anxiety by creating a facade of casualness. I walked the cobblestone path, tracing my fingers across the intricate patterns underfoot, while doing my best to blend in with the vacationers around me. Tourists snapped selfies, couples strolled hand in hand, while children gleefully chased after each other, blissfully unaware of the impending heartache I was trying to unearth. As I approached the cafe, my heart thumped like the frantic beating of a trapped bird. I perched myself strategically on a bench tucked beneath sprawling palm leaves, its shadows shifting gently along my anxious frame. My heart felt heavy, burdened by the weight of uncertainty. Despite my best attempts to remain an anonymous observer, I couldn't help but imagine her laughing with someone else, dancing joyously to a song we once shared. When I spotted her through the cafe's glass windows, nestled across from Edwin, all those gentle fantasies crumbled. There they were, two conspirators cloaked in mirth, their bodies hunched closely as if sharing a secret only the two of them were privileged enough to know. My heart dropped, and my grip tightened around my phone, a lifeline turned lethargic anchor. Clara leaned closer to Edwin, her lips stretched into an easy smile that I had yearned to see in our moments together. An inconceivable pang twisted within me, a mixture of betrayal and disbelief pouring like poison through my veins. "Can I get you a drink?" Edwin asked, his tone laced with affectionate teasing. I despised him for it, the way his voice danced around her, wrapping her in a cocoon of everything I wasn't. But it was as if hearing his voice shattered the last pieces of invisibility, pushing the truth to the forefront. This was not just a harmless lunch nor a simple friendship, it was so much more. I'll have whatever you're having, Clara replied, her laughter a melodious chime that reverberated through me. She reached across the table to touch Edwin's hand briefly, her fingers brushing against his with a casual intimacy that ignited a firestorm inside me. I wanted to scream, to rail against the unseen forces that had conspired to unravel everything I clung to. How could she do this to me? To us? As I leaned forward, an awful fire bloomed in my abdomen, pushing me to stand and confront them prematurely, but I schooled my breathing, forcing myself to stay hidden within my corner of anguish. I needed proof, solid evidence that would anchor my spiraling emotions in ironclad reality. I could not allow reckless anger to take over. I had to be methodical, even while my heart raged a tempest within me. With a sudden clarity, I raised my phone, documenting their laughter and low whispers, fingers tapping away like a key composer documenting a song just before its crescendo. Each photo I snapped made my insides churn, filling me with dread and loathing. The thought that this was how Clara allowed someone else to enter her heart, even just a fragment of it, was sickening and surreal. I remained there, frozen in time. The world around me morphed into a blurred mosaic of vibrant colors and chaotic sounds that drowned out my gut-wrenching heartache. The sunlight bore down, making me feel exposed, as if all around me were spectators to the unceremonious disintegration of my world. My heart warred within me. You love her, so you fight for her. You want the truth, so you cut her loose. As Clara playfully flicked her hair over her shoulder, it appeared luminous against the dull backdrop of my despair. I stood transfixed, painfully aware that I was a mere voyeur of my own life, insufficiently equipped to confront the beast that had so unexpectedly breached the sanctity of what we built dearly over the past years. When I finally returned to the hotel that night, the dream vacation twisted into a horror show crafted from my own imagination. Clara was oblivious, wrapping herself in the fabric of warmth and fidelity she believed still thrummed between us. She laughed about sunburns and the aroma of fried fish lingering in the air, speaking of excursions to explore more of the island. But all I could hear was the echo of her laughter with Edwin filling the air, like daggers in a once peaceful sanctuary. I lay back on our bed, sleepless, gripped by the need to untangle this web of treachery. No more pretending, I thought, steeling myself against the tears gathering in my eyes. I craved resolution, but first, I would confront the specter of betrayal seeping into our relationship. As moonlight filtered dimly through the drawn curtains, the shadows around me whispered uncertainty, yet I clutched tightly to the one certainty that remained. I would get my answers, and I would fight for what remained of my heart and dignity. My hope began to form a singular mantra within me: truth over illusion, always. The hours dragged on, thick and shrouded in my mounting dread. I watched the ceiling fan spin lazily above me, a cyclical reminder of the futility of letters forgotten in solitude. Clara was asleep beside me, her tranquil breathing rising and falling like the gentle tide lapping at the shore just beyond our balcony. But beneath the veneer of repose, I was awake, an insomniac in my own life, grappling with haunting truths. As I listened to her murmured dreams, each soft syllable rolled over me, like a wave hiding a treacherous undertow, threatening to pull me down into the depths of despair. I rolled over, my back to her, as the weight of silence thickened in the room. The haunting image of Clara and Edwin had cemented itself in my mind, replaying like an endless reel of film. Their laughter echoed louder than any wave crashing against the rocks, crescendoing into a tempest inside my skull. I wanted to shake her awake, to pull the fabric of that blissfully naive facade apart thread by golden thread, to expose what she had been burying beneath her smile. How could she betray me in paradise of all places? Sleep eluded me, taunting me through the night. I could feel the darkness creeping into the crevices of my heart, siphoning away hope as I debated how to approach the inevitable confrontation. Maybe it was best to hurl accusations like a stone into the sea, to break the surface tension of her perceived innocence. Yet another part of me, a crazed, aching part, yearned for clarity, for a connection that had been sullied yet still flickered like a candle fighting wind. As dawn kissed the fragile horizon, I felt resolve closing in around me. The bright oranges and reds that stretched across the sky reminded me of the love I once knew, those bright hues of romance that had woven through our shared moments over the sunlit years. What had happened to that vibrant landscape? I smiled softly, recalling the warmth of a time when we shared giddy laughter over breakfast in bed, the sweet smell of coffee curling in the air, all while planning our futures together. But those memories were tainted now, shattered glass beneath the weight of betrayal, scattered across the floor of a once harmonious existence. Part of me feared the truth, Perhaps it would unveil the fragile threads holding us together, inevitably unraveling them completely. Yet I knew I could no longer stand in this limbo of uncertainty. I needed to confront her, but the method of my inquiry felt like an unsteady tightrope act. Should I walk in calmly, like everything was fine? Or should I explode like dynamite, shattering this peaceful illusion? I sank deeper into my troubled thoughts, realizing that whatever path I chose would define the future of our relationship, if any future remained at all. Eventually, I emerged from bed, all quite resolved, and stepped outside onto the balcony. The salty breeze bathed my skin. Every breath felt like a baptism, washing away the shame and fear that twisted within me. I leaned on the railing, letting the early sun melt the residue of rage pooling in my heart. I had memories of Clara with Edwin, insidious reminders of intimacy that should have been ours, but I would no longer retreat into self-pity. There was too much at stake. Then I heard her yawn behind me, a soft sound betraying her awakening. She sauntered toward me, hair tousled, wearing that familiar sleepy expression that had once charmed me. "Good morning," she said softly, her voice sounding like the gentle hum of mourning doves. All at once, any warmth I had felt vanished, replaced by the icy dagger of betrayal lodged in my chest. "Morning," I replied, attempting to maintain an even tone, but my voice faltered slightly. She nestled beside me, resting her head on my shoulder, an innocence that felt feigned. Our skin brushed for just a moment, sending a wave of warmth through me. Yet it felt wrong, like a dry well had been struck amidst an oasis of longing. The weight of her proximity solidified my resolve. "Did you sleep well?" she ventured, the question floating in the air. "Not really." I searched for courage within me, an anchor to hold on to, as I turned to face her. "We need to talk." The casual moment shattered like glass, and the air grew thick with unvoiced confessions. Clara's smile faltered, her brow furrowing with confusion. "About what?" Her innocence was infuriating. "About you and Edwin. I saw you yesterday at the cafe," I stated bluntly. Had anyone told me that I'd be the bearer of such emotion-laden news in this idyllic setting, I might have laughed, believing it pure fantasy. But here I stood, a man with a universe of betrayal darkening his heart. The change in her demeanor felt palpable, like molasses caught in a sunbeam. "You saw us," she stammered, suddenly very much awake and alert. "You were right there, Clara," I replied, barely keeping the tremor from my voice. "How could you? How could you smile like that with him?" In that moment, I felt guiltfully selfish for expecting clarity, for needing answers from a woman inching closer to a breaking point. The weight of my own emotions fluctuated in the suffocating silence between us. Clara's eyes widened with alarm, but as panic spread across her features, I knew this confrontation would mark the line we'd either cross together or crumble apart. "I can explain." Her voice was shaky, almost pleading. "Explain what?" "Feelings. They're not seals to an envelope. You can just tuck away for another day," I challenged, unable to swallow back my anger. "This isn't about misunderstandings. It feels like a betrayal written in bright letters." I turned away, not wanting to see the expression on her face, afraid of its complexity. Would she confess to feelings entwined like vines around her heart? In that raw moment of possible honesty, would she craft twisted apologies wrapped in guilt, like a spider's web lacing around my sanity? My heart begged for clarity, yet dangled dangerously near the edge of ruin. She reached for my arm, but I stepped away. I could feel her shimmering regret from a distance, but the warmth of our shared affection felt stifling. Whatever affection lingered was now caught amidst the odor of betrayal, each passing moment feeding the darkness that flared inside me. Was it worth it? I whispered, wondering if I could bear to hear her answer. Was he worth the trust we built? The love we shared? The years coming together? Silence fell between us like shroud, thickening the air until everything felt suffocating. I struggled against the urge to strip away all pretense and let anger explode like fireworks against a midnight sky. I needed to know the truth that she had crafted behind a facade of simple mornings and shared celebrations. Shattering that illusion required courage, and my heart clenched in a dissonance of fighting against that affinity I couldn't fully let go of. But in that moment, adorned in a tapestry of love laced with betrayal, the threads began to fray. I felt myself teetering toward the unknown, my pulse racing to reclaim what had been lost. This was the beginning, a confrontation that demanded clarity, a reckoning that would either mend or sever the bond we fought to hold dear. One way or another, I was finally ready to face the truth. The hours drifted like stagnant water, the steady rhythm of Clara's breathing beside me filling the space with an unwelcome sense of normalcy. I could see sunlight leaking through the edges of the curtains, painting the room a warm hue of gold that contrasted sharply with the chill in my heart. Just the day before, I had believed we were on a blissful vacation, our spirits intertwined against the backdrop of a vibrant resort. Now, everything had crumbled to ash, and the echoes of laughter faded away, leaving only a haunting silence. "Did you sleep well?" Clara's voice, once soothing, cut through the lingering unease, digging deeper into wounds still fresh. Her eyes, bright and curious, searched my face, looking for shadows of the affection we'd painted together. I wanted to respond with kindness, but the image of her laughter with Edwin replayed in heavy loops, the way their chemistry boiled over in that cafe, the hidden gem of their history sparkling in ways my love for her never could. "No," I finally replied, the word falling from my lips like a stone cast into a deep, dark well. Her smile faltered as she processed my answer, her brow furrowing in concern. She pulled herself up to rest on one elbow, gazing at me with an intensity that momentarily flickered warmth. But it felt hollow, like a mirage vanishing as I reached for it. "We need to talk," I said, anchoring my gaze on the horizon beyond the balcony. The waves crashed against the shore with a roar of fury that mirrored my own internal tempest. "What about?" she asked, her voice laden with a tangible unease, the gentle morning light cloaked in tension. "About you and Edwin," I stated, forcing the words through the tightness in my throat. Each syllable was a knife, slicing through the remnants of our togetherness. "I saw you yesterday at the cafe. You looked happy." In the instant that followed, the world seemed to pause. Her face drained of color, morphing from confused to alarmed as reality sank its claws into her carefully constructed facade. "You saw us." She sounded breathless, her words stumbling like a terrified child in the dark. "Yes, Clara," I replied sharply, stinging like ocean spray on a raw wound. "How could you betray me like this?" I abruptly turned, facing her fully, desperate for a reaction, anything to reveal the truth that had been hibernating underneath her skin. I didn't mean for you to find out like this," she stammered, the realization of what she had done crashing down around her like shattered glass, the pieces razor-sharp. I watched the flicker of panic in her eyes, a flame igniting the remnants of my love with an unbearable anger that tinged every corner of my heart. "What did you mean, then?" I spat, the tremor in my voice betraying my mounting rage. "Did you mean to keep it hidden under layers of lies?" My chest tightened, the air thickening as emotions spilled forth, unchecked. "Listen to me." Clara's voice broke through my chaos, a thread of desperation tying her words together. "You can't just throw accusations at me. This was complicated." "Complicated?" I echoed, throwing my hands up in disbelief. "You were right there with him. Do you even hear the words as they come out of your mouth? How can you justify this? You were laughing, Clara. You shared moments with him that should have been ours." I felt my voice surge, the bitter echoes of betrayal lingering like a fog in the air around us. Clara's always bright eyes now shimmered with shame and regret, the dichotomy of our love and her deception crashing like two waves colliding in the storm of my anguish. "I can explain," she said softly, her voice trembling with sincerity, but the utterance triggered an unrestrained swell of agitation inside me. "Explain what, Clara?" I hissed, barely able to manage the control that kept me from shattering, from carving into her the pain she'd caused. Feelings are not just a breadcrumb left for the birds. You can't sprinkle your fears or vulnerabilities and expect trust to grow back from what's left. As silence fell uncomfortably between us, the weight of her guilt settled like a heavy fog swallowing the coastline. I gazed out toward the endless expanse of ocean, its beauty tainted by our dissonance. The waves rhythmically crashed against the shoreline, each one whispering the insistence of unresolved emotions, burying any remnants of what once was. But I wasn't ready to cede myself to despair, not for an act of betrayal too significant to brush aside. "Was it worth it?" I finally whispered. The words clawed their way up from deep within, raw and desperate. Was he worth the trust we built? The laughter? The love we promised to cherish? Clara's expression shifted, contemplating the depths of my inquiry. For a fleeting moment, I saw hesitation dance in her eyes, a subtle brush of uncertainty that felt as suffocating as the weight of her choices bearing down upon our shared history. "I didn't want to hurt you, that's all," she said, her voice barely louder than a breath. But those words felt empty, drifting like leaves caught in a storm. I struggled against the urge to give in, tempted to leap into the breach of our love, throwing in my lot with anger rather than the shattered devotion I had fought to maintain. Perhaps you should have thought about that before, I replied, my voice firmer now, unwilling to roll over this time. Was this love, what you shared with him? Or was it merely a shadow of your insecurities tangled in deceit? Standing at the precipice of honesty, we faced each other in that moment, every ounce of trust hanging by a thin thread. I could feel the rawness of emotion swirling between us, thick enough to choke on, but inviting enough to be ensnared in. Clara reached out for my arm, her fingers a gentle caress that felt foreign against the tension rising between us. I stepped back, creating distance between us, the warmth of her touch suddenly igniting the flames of uncertainty. You can't just put your hand on me and expect things to be okay. There are lines that you've crossed, Clara. Lines I never thought I'd have to defend. We stood there, two figures trapped on the edge of a precipice, the sun illuminating the divide growing ever wider. Behind us lay echoes of moments that shimmered with a love once profound, now rendered tarnished by choices steeped in betrayal. The beach stretched out below, the rhythmic tide marking the boundary of past and present, urging understanding, yet threatening to pull apart the fragile threads of our connection. And as we hovered on that brink, tension crackling in the air like electricity, I prepared myself, ready to confront the inevitable consequences of this shattered trust, aware that whatever unfolded from this moment would seal our fate. Will we draw closer, fueled by honesty, or will we fracture irreparably, each piece echoing the reverberations of pain, loss, and shattered dreams? The minutes stretched into infinity as Clara and I stood there, suspended in a fragile web of unresolved emotions. Each wave crashing against the shore seemed to churn the heavy silence hanging between us, mirroring the tempest brewing in my heart. I inhaled deeply, the salty sea air sweeping through my lungs, hoping it might cleanse me of the bitterness I felt pooling inside. But it did little to ease the aching weight of betrayal clenching around me. I just needed someone to talk to, she finally whispered, her voice trembling with the fear of the truth she had created. Things felt so complicated between us before the vacation. I didn't mean to cross a line. Her attempt at justification felt like nails dragging across chalkboard, grating, unacceptable. I could feel bile rising in my throat. Complicated. I echoed incredulously, my fingers curling into fists by my side. You found comfort in another man while you were in a relationship with me. That's not complicated, Clara. That's a choice. A choice that you orchestrated under the guise of friendship. She flinched at my words, the impact hitting home. A fateful silence wrapped around us like shroud, filled only by the rhythmic crashing of waves, urgent and relentless, much like the thoughts racing through my mind. Why had we gotten to this juncture, where everything we shared was crumbling into dust at our feet? Do you think I wanted this to happen? To hurt you, she urged, her voice a raw whisper filled with desperation. I was trying to navigate my own feelings. I don't expect you to understand. Then help me understand, I shot back, anger making me more audacious than I'd intended. How can being with him feel so, right when we were supposedly in love? I threw my hands up, exasperated. The sun glinted off her tear-streaked cheeks, but I found no pity in my heart. You need to know that every moment you shared with him was a moment snatched away from what we were building together. Clara's tears fell freely now, echoing the profound weight of our fractured connection. It was never about you, she cried, her voice cracking under the strain. I didn't even know what I was doing. I was lost, trying to find myself. Edwin, he understood me in ways I had forgotten you did. My breath hitched painfully in my throat. Each word pierced my heart, reminding me of what I had willingly offered Clara, only to have her squander it. A fragile line of anger coiled tightly within me, a desire for retaliation battling against the remnants of my love. I struggled to cling to the good memories, but betrayal felt like acid, corroding what we had once cherished. Then how can I trust you to find yourself again? The question slipped from my lips, caustic and raw. If you found solace in another's arms when I was right there, how do I know you won't run again? You should have fought harder for what we had instead of clawing into someone else. This isn't a game, Clara. This is our life, our love, and you could have reached out to me. I made a mistake, she pleaded, her fingers brushing my hand like a desperate anchor. I didn't think. We were drifting, and I felt so alone. It wasn't about Edwin. It was about me feeling lost in myself. Can you see that? I recoiled, the stinging sensation of betrayal hardening, how I viewed her attempt to grapple with our crisis. I didn't want her sorrowful pledges muddled by remorse, I craved responsibility, accountability for her actions. It was a choice, not an impulse. You sought companionship outside our walls rather than addressing the fault lines quietly appearing between us. I replied, my voice low but fierce. No, she shouted suddenly, her expression morphing from forlorn to wrathful. I should have chosen you, yes, but this isn't all on me. You shut down. The days blended into weeks, pointless conversations about nothing. How can you expect me to stand idly while you draw into silence? This is about us both. The heat of her frustration lit the air around us. I felt the sting of truth wrapped within her words, yet it acted like a mere veil against the jagged edges her deceit left behind. Every ounce of her argument only poured more fuel onto a fire of discontent bubbling beneath my skin. We can't pretend the cracks will repair themselves with excuses or half-hearted confessions, I said, feeling my composure waver. As the sun dipped lower, shadows crept across our surroundings, a growing darkness mirroring the situation before us. I could feel the ground shift beneath our feet, the once solid foundation of our relationship now uncertain and fragile. Clara, I don't know if we can stay together after this. I can't just forget what you chose to do. I can't reconcile the you that hurt me with the you I fell in love with. The tears continued streaming down her face, glistening under the fading light like the remnants of our love, distilled down to their essence, heartbreak, rage, and confusion. Please, she sobbed softly, breaking the air with a fragile plea. I love you. I need you to believe that I can be the woman you loved again. Love was a complex tapestry woven from trust, respect, and understanding, none of which Clara had intended to destroy. Love requires honesty, Clara, I said, my voice steady despite the tumultuous feelings roiling beneath my calm exterior. I took a deep breath and glanced toward the horizon, the endless ocean twinkling under moonlight as if whispering forgotten promises, urging clarity. I need to rethink everything before we even discuss what could be next. We stood there, two lost souls on the precipice of ruin, weighed down by the gravity of choices made and echoes of betrayal that refused to subside. The waves roared in the distance, a fitting soundtrack to this unfolding tragedy, each crest and fall colliding like the remnants of our love. The air hummed with tension, setting the stage for decisions that would ultimately define both our futures. Would we rise, like the tide returning anew, or would we retreat into the shadows of what we once cherished, forever altered by the growing chasm called betrayal? The minutes stretched into infinity as Clara and I stood there, suspended in a fragile web of unresolved emotions. Each wave crashing against the shore seemed to churn the heavy silence hanging between us, mirroring the tempest brewing in my heart. I inhaled deeply, the salty sea air sweeping through my lungs, hoping it might cleanse me of the bitterness I felt pooling inside. But it did little to ease the aching weight of betrayal clenching around me. I just needed someone to talk to, she finally whispered, her voice trembling with the fear of the truth she had created. Things felt so complicated between us before the vacation. I didn't mean to cross a line. Her attempt at justification felt like nails dragging across chalkboard, grating, unacceptable. I could feel bile rising in my throat. Complicated. I echoed incredulously, my fingers curling into fists by my side. You found comfort in another man while you were in a relationship with me. That's not complicated, Clara. That's a choice. A choice that you orchestrated under the guise of friendship. She flinched at my words, the impact hitting home. A fateful silence wrapped around us like shroud, filled only by the rhythmic crashing of waves, urgent and relentless, much like the thoughts racing through my mind. Why had we gotten to this juncture, where everything we shared was crumbling into dust at our feet? Do you think I wanted this to happen? To hurt you, she urged, her voice a raw whisper filled with desperation. I was trying to navigate my own feelings. I don't expect you to understand. Then help me understand, I shot back, anger making me more audacious than I'd intended. How can being with him feel so, right when we were supposedly in love? I threw my hands up, exasperated. The sun glinted off her tear-streaked cheeks, but I found no pity in my heart. You need to know that every moment you shared with him was a moment snatched away from what we were building together. Clara's tears fell freely now, echoing the profound weight of our fractured connection. It was never about you, she cried, her voice cracking under the strain. I didn't even know what I was doing. I was lost, trying to find myself. Edwin, he understood me in ways I had forgotten you did. My breath hitched painfully in my throat. Each word pierced my heart, reminding me of what I had willingly offered Clara, only to have her squander it. A fragile line of anger coiled tightly within me, a desire for retaliation battling against the remnants of my love. I struggled to cling to the good memories, but betrayal felt like acid, corroding what we had once cherished. Then how can I trust you to find yourself again? The question slipped from my lips, caustic and raw. If you found solace in another's arms when I was right there, how do I know you won't run again? You should have fought harder for what we had instead of clawing into someone else. This isn't a game, Clara. This is our life, our love, and you could have reached out to me. I made a mistake, she pleaded, her fingers brushing my hand like a desperate anchor. I didn't think. We were drifting, and I felt so alone. It wasn't about Edwin. It was about me feeling lost in myself. Can't you see that? I recoiled, the stinging sensation of betrayal hardening, how I viewed her attempt to grapple with our crisis. I didn't want her sorrowful pledges muddled by remorse. I craved responsibility, accountability for her actions. It was a choice, not an impulse. You sought companionship outside our walls rather than addressing the fault lines quietly appearing between us. I replied, my voice low but fierce. No, she shouted suddenly, her expression morphing from forlorn to wrathful. I should have chosen you, yes, but this isn't all on me. You shut down. The days blended into weeks, pointless conversations about nothing. How can you expect me to stand idly while you draw into silence? This is about us both. The heat of her frustration lit the air around us. I felt the sting of truth wrapped within her words, yet it acted like a mere veil against the jagged edges her deceit left behind. Every ounce of her argument only poured more fuel onto a fire of discontent bubbling beneath my skin. We can't pretend the cracks will repair themselves with excuses or half-hearted confessions, I said, feeling my composure waver. As the sun dipped lower, shadows crept across our surroundings, a growing darkness mirroring the situation before us. I could feel the ground shift beneath our feet, the once solid foundation of our relationship now uncertain and fragile. Clara, I don't know if we can stay together after this. I can't just forget what you chose to do. I can't reconcile the you that hurt me with the you I fell in love with. The tears continued streaming down her face, glistening under the fading light like the remnants of our love, distilled down to their essence, heartbreak, rage, and confusion. Please, she sobbed softly, breaking the air with a fragile plea. I love you. I need you to believe that I can be the woman you loved again. Love was a complex tapestry woven from trust, respect, and understanding, none of which Clara had intended to destroy. Love requires honesty, Clara, I said, my voice steady despite the tumultuous feelings roiling beneath my calm exterior. I took a deep breath and glanced toward the horizon, the endless ocean twinkling under moonlight as if whispering forgotten promises, urging clarity. I need to rethink everything before we even discuss what could be next. We stood there, two lost souls on the precipice of ruin, weighed down by the gravity of choices made and echoes of betrayal that refused to subside. The waves roared in the distance, a fitting soundtrack to this unfolding tragedy, each crest and fall colliding like the remnants of our love. The air hummed with tension, setting the stage for decisions that would ultimately define both our futures. Would we rise, like the tide returning anew, or would we retreat into the shadows of what we once cherished, forever altered by the growing chasm called betrayal? As darkness settled in, it wrapped us in its cloak. The air grew colder, the beach barren save for us. As the silence stretched uncomfortably, I could feel Clara's desperation intensifying, each quickened breath sending tremors through the nightly stillness. It seemed as if time slowed, allowing the enormity of what had transpired to seep into the marrow of our beings. Waves lapped at my feet, their coolness mingling with the warmth of anger still pulsing through my veins. What happens now? She asked, her voice a tremulous echo of fragility. Do we just walk away from everything? I thought I was walking into paradise with you, I admitted, my tone softer but no less poignant. This vacation was supposed to be a chance for us to build something new, to move forward. Instead, you set fire to my trust and left it smoldering at my feet. A dream vacation turned into a nightmare. The hurt seemed to break her composure, her shoulders shaking as she lowered her head, staring at the sand beneath us. I can't expect you to trust me again after what I've done. I don't even trust myself. But I swear to you, I never wanted this. I was searching for something I thought I lost, and in my foolishness, I ended up losing you instead. Her words, laced with regret, made my chest ache, but it was a bittersweet pang, laced with confusion and an overwhelming desire still lingering within me. I yearned to embrace her, to ignore the sandstorms of hurt and find our way back to each other. But how could I? Each moment we spent here now felt tainted, like a song once sweet that turned sour. Sometimes I wonder if we were too young when we fell in love. I confessed, the vulnerability of my admission raw. We thought we had it all figured out, but relationships, they demand more than passion. They need the strength of bonds built with care and communication. Maybe I was naive, Clara whispered, breaking the silence. Maybe we were both naive. But I want to make this work if you'll let me. I want the chance to show you I can be that person again. Her eyes shimmered with a glimmer of hope amidst despair, pulling me in like waves drawn toward the shore. Yet, the gulf between us felt insurmountable, a chasm carved deeper with each shared wound. I don't know if I can give you that chance right now. My heart spoke before my mind could react. Trust is a fragile thing, Clara. It doesn't bounce back from a fall. It takes time to heal, if it ever does. An uncomfortable silence enveloped us again, the weight of uncertainty pressing heavy against my chest. I watched as Clara's tears shimmered in the moonlight, each droplet a reminder of what we'd lost. And in that moment, I felt the flickers of love rekindling amidst the wreckage of our shared history, battling against the harsh reality of her recent choices. I need time. I finally conceded, swallowing the lump in my throat, my words coming out with utmost deliberation. Time to process everything, to sift through the ashes of what was, and consider if there's anything left to salvage. If there's a path forward for us at all. A deep sigh escaped Clara's lips, the sound tremulous in the evening air. I understand, she replied, her voice cracking under emotional strain, tinted with resignation. I'll give you all the time you need, even if it feels endless. Her response hung between us, a promise sealed with both vulnerability and fear. As we stood in the dim light of dusk, the roar of the ocean masked the trembling uncertainty coursing through my veins. The cool breeze caressed my skin, but felt heavy with the weight of our unraveling relationship. Each heartbeat echoed a mix of sorrow and a strange sense of determination, a conflict that repulsed yet fascinated me. I longed for clarity, yet found myself mired in a cacophony of emotions, a whirlwind threatening to consume me whole. Footsteps in the sand whispered of moments moving on, yet I chose not to look away, not to flee. Instead, I remained close enough to smell the vanilla of her hair and the bitter scent of salt that lingered on her cheeks. My feelings for Clara were an enigma wrapped in deceit, love still coursing through the remnants of my heart, struggling to reconcile with the jagged shards of despair she had hurled into my life. I didn't come to Cancun for heartbreak, I murmured, more to myself than to her. We were supposed to grow, to escape. And now, it feels like we're trapped in a never-ending cycle of pain. Clara looked at me then, her eyes wide and luminous under the moonlight. I know, she said, taking a tentative step forward. But there is still love between us, isn't there? Somewhere beneath all this chaos? We can find it again. I know we can. Her desperate pleading echoed painfully in my heart, igniting the embers of hope I had stifled over the last few days. But hope was a fragile construct, easily quashed by the reality we faced. I don't know if we can retrieve what was lost, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. We need to rediscover this love, or else we're just pretending. With reluctant acceptance, I tore my gaze from her searching eyes and turned toward the ocean that stretched endlessly in front of us. The waves were a mirage, distant yet omnipresent, a reminder of the endless choices that lay before us. Despite the turmoil in my heart, I appreciated the rhythm they brought, a cosmic promise of renewal that felt strangely comforting. The cool sand beneath my feet gave a sudden sense of grounding, urging me to reflect on my choices, even as Clara's hand brushed against my arm, an echo of connection, an invitation to stay. We were caught on the brink of transformation. I could either reach for the fibers of our bond or allow myself to be swept away by the tide of hurt. Let's take a break from all this for a moment, I suggested, attempting to lighten the weight saturating the atmosphere. Let's not define our future right now. Rather, let's just— My voice trailed off, uncertainty filtering through the words that felt monumentally inadequate. Let's just be here, Clara finished for me, and for an instant she smiled, the kind of smile that made me remember our earlier days, before fragility turned to betrayal. I glanced back at her, my heart caught between longing for that simpler time and the heavy burden of reality. Just us on the beach, under the stars, I echoed as we sank into the coolness of the sand, the tension easing but the reality of our situation still palpable. The waves continue their rhythmic chant, drawing me back toward the hopes and dreams I had once nurtured, that maybe, just maybe, amidst the wreckage of our love, something beautiful could still emerge. Clara took a deep breath, the air filled with the weight of our past, her presence a bittersweet memory anchoring me to the present. I believe we can find our way back somehow, she murmured tentatively. Her voice brought forth an internal tempest. I had no idea how we might traverse this convoluted path, but I wasn't ready to close the door on the past just yet. As we sat in silence, letting the soothing lapping of waves wash over us, I felt a flicker within, a determination born not just from a desire to confront the betrayal, but also the possibility of carving out a renewed relationship from the ashes. I knew the future loomed before us like a battlefield strewn with memories that could either break us apart or bind us once again. The cool breeze blended with potential. It whispered encouragement for difficult dialogues yet to come. What lay ahead could offer healing or further division. I longed for understanding, for space to explore what love meant amidst the jagged edges of deception, and more so, if the pain between us could one day be transformed into something stronger. For now, we would embrace this fragile moment, holding on to the warmth of shared breaths, treading carefully on the tightrope of emotions until clearer skies revealed the path forward. Time, an elusive companion, beckoned with the whispers of hope, trailing lightly behind us as we journeyed into the realm of uncertainty, together yet separated by the fragmented echoes of yesterday. My heartbeat slowed, sinking rhythmically with the gentle ebb and flow of the ocean. The cool breeze washed over us, mingling with the scent of salt and sand, offering a soothing balm against the clatter of my turbulent thoughts. Clara's presence beside me felt like a flickering candle in a storm, warm yet vulnerable. Did this fragile ember have the strength to rekindle the fire of our love, or would it flicker out the moment reality struck? The stars above glittered like diamonds, each one representing a memory we had shared, a promise once made now mired in confusion and betrayal. Yet beneath the starlit sky, I sensed a possibility, an opening, where two hearts could navigate out of the shadows and into a space of understanding. Yet, I was apprehensive, teetering on the edge of hope and self-preservation. What if this moment isn't enough? I questioned, my voice steadied despite the turmoil inside. What if the love we're clinging to is just an echo? What if it can't survive this? I turned to face Clara, her eyes reflecting the shimmering moonlight and a myriad emotions swirling within them. Fear, regret, longing. Her brow furrowed as she grasped for the right words, moments stretching into eternity between us. Love isn't simply a feeling to be revived, Brian. It's something we build layer upon layer, even after it feels like everything has crumbled, she argued softly, her earnestness unwavering. We owe it to ourselves to explore both the hurt and the healing. Can you see that? I wish I could, but everything I thought I knew about us is cracked open, I replied, frustration evolving into vulnerability as I clenched the soft sand beneath my fingers. You let someone else into our beautiful narrative, a dark chapter that doesn't just fade away. Those scars are deep, Clara. The admission felt raw, hanging over me like the horizon at dawn, a thin line between despair and the light of possible renewal. Clara shifted closer, her warmth enveloping me in an instant, pulling at the remnants of my guarded heart. I know I hurt you, and I can't take that back. Her voice lowered, unearthing a sorrow that felt like an apology without conditions. But I'm standing here, willing to fight for us. I need you to see that this isn't just about me. It's about us, even if our foundation feels shaky. In that silent exchange, as I lingered between possibilities, I felt something shift, not in the world around me, but in the very core of who I was becoming. Clara's arms wrapped around my shoulders, a tender cocoon amidst the chaos. My heart wrestled against the chains of anger and betrayal. They were both potent and heavy, yet a part of me longed to break free. One whispered question pierced through the static of my thoughts. Was it love or fear pulling me back toward her? Was I holding on to hope or simply resisting the change that needed to come whether I liked it or not? Let's not rush, I finally suggested, though the words felt like tentative moves on a chessboard, each one significant and precarious. Let's agree to explore what we once had, not just the facade but the roots of our love. We owe it to ourselves to do this, right? Clara nodded, relief flashing across her features, illuminated by the moon's luminosity. I want that, she said earnestly. No pretense, just honesty even when it's painful. We'll go back to just us and see what still lies beneath the surface. I swallowed hard, my throat dry from the weight of so many unsaid things. The idea of peeling back layers, of confronting the cold truth of my heartbreak, felt daunting. But the longing for clarity began to unravel within me, igniting a flame that demanded attention. We both need to embrace honesty, even when it stings. So much has been left unsaid. Clara stepped back slightly, but didn't let go of my gaze. Then we start here, she responded, her fingers tightening around my wrist, creating a tether that made me feel seen. Let's be vulnerable. No barriers, no hiding. Just two people navigating the aftermath of mistakes. As I took a steadying breath, I could feel the tension that had permeated our relationship ease, like a shift in the tide. The world appeared wider, the night darker, but filled with the richness of potential, not the dimming embers of what was lost. Suddenly, the ocean no longer felt like a predator ready to swallow me whole. Instead, it echoed deeper lessons about resilience and rebirth. So we sat on the cool sand, two souls adrift yet yearning for connection amidst the aftermath of shattered dreams. Clara spoke of her fears, the loneliness that had brewed even in a relationship punctuated by passion, while I revealed my insecurities, often swallowed by the insidious belief that love itself was inherently conditional, dependent on unwavering trust. Our words mingled with the sound of crashing waves, underscoring the vulnerability we had lain bare. Clara's voice was a balm, physically warming me as she recounted mornings spent plotting futures, yet grappling with doubts that had spiraled into betrayal. In sharing our fears, we peeled away the layers of guilt and resentment, gradually exposing a fragile core, our undying need to heal from the shrapnel of heartbreak. I never realized how lonely I would feel with Edwin while pretending I could sustain our bond, Clara confessed, her breath hitching between sentences. I sought distraction rather than facing my truth. I didn't want to lose you, yet I felt suffocated by expectations I couldn't meet. I was scared of losing you, of losing myself. Her confession unspooled in a knotted thread buried in my chest. I recalled my own fears, the nagging self-doubt that had whispered to me, what if I wasn't enough? Sharing these insecurities felt like stepping from a cliff, and yet I sensed that our words could pave a path back to one another. For the first time in what felt like forever, vulnerability felt less like a burden and more like a choice, a deliberate act of love intertwined with shared growth. I squeezed her hand, hardening that tether between us and anchoring it deep within the soil of our collective battle. Just as the waves made their way back to shore, we faced our own uncertain future, tide barely receding, but the possibilities of change began to take root in the fertile expanse of our dialogue. Perhaps, together, we could navigate this turbulent ocean of emotions, exploring each corner of our hearts that had been masked in shadows. As the stars twinkled above us, I allowed a sliver of hope to take form, not yet taking the shape of certainty, but a subtle acknowledgement that through shared pain, perhaps the shards of our love could be assembled into something beautiful, something whole. Together, we were willing to sift through the wreckage and clasp tightly to the belief that the landscape of our hearts could still be forged anew, even amid the remnants of a fractured past.